Welcome back, sports fans, to the Week 7 NFL recap presented by Sports Fanatic. We're going to be going over the games from the NFL as we are about 1 week away from the halfway mark, pretty much. This week's NFL games, they were a little less exciting, but there were still some good games, still some good finishes. So we're going to dive right in to look at the Week 7 scores that weren't very close. There were actually 3 shutouts in football this week. The Los Angeles Rams dropped a 33-0 hammer over the Arizona Cardinals, who now have to deal with a Carson Palmer injury. The Jacksonville Jaguars totally stomped on the Indianapolis Colts with a 27-0 victory. In a bizarre win, the Chicago Bears stomped the Carolina Panthers 17-3. It featured both of the Bears' touchdowns being defensive. The Dallas Cowboys put up a big 40 spot, leading to some huge fantasy performances, as they got a nice 40-10 win over the winless San Francisco 49ers. The Los Angeles Chargers shut out the Denver Broncos with a clean 21-0 win. Pittsburgh Steelers got a nice win over the Cincinnati Bengals, 29-14. The Seattle Seahawks handled the New York Giants 24-7. And the New England Patriots took care of business against the Atlanta Falcons 23-7. Now we're going to look at some closer matchups. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Oakland Raiders on Thursday night. Possibly one of the best games of the year. The Raiders had a nice 14-10 lead after a busy first quarter, but the Chiefs then dropped 10 points in the second, and the Chiefs led 20-14 at halftime. Both teams got a touchdown in the third quarter, and the Chiefs still led 27-21. Chiefs then followed it up with a field goal before the end of the third quarter. They were up 30-21. The Raiders did get a field goal with 12 minutes left. They were all of a sudden only down by 6. The Raiders then scored a touchdown with 28 seconds left, but the replay review says that he was out at the 1-yard line, or down at the 1-yard line, and the Raiders would have to try again. On the next play, the Raiders score a touchdown, and it's nullified by a pass interference, so they got to try again. They failed to score on the last play of the game, but they get one more chance because the Chiefs commit a defensive holding penalty. And then on the last play of the game, the Raiders do score a touchdown and kick the extra point, which was important because the Raiders win 31-30, upsetting the Kansas City Chiefs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers played the Buffalo Bills this week. The Buccaneers started the game with a 50-yard field goal, and then both teams followed it up with a field goal in the first quarter, and the Bucs had a 6-3 lead. The Bills did get a touchdown in the second quarter to lead 10-6 at halftime. Both teams scored a touchdown in the third quarter, and the Bills were leading 17-13. The Bills then kicked a big 52-yard field goal with 13 and a half minutes left to take the lead 20-13. The Buccaneers then scored a touchdown 3 minutes later to tie the game 20-20. The Bucs again scored a touchdown with 3:20 left in the game to lead 27-20, but the Bills came right back to tie the game 27-27. And after a Buccaneers fumble, the Bills clutch up with 18 seconds left to win 30-27. The Baltimore Ravens played the Minnesota Vikings this week. The Ravens started off the game with a mighty 48-yard field goal, and the Vikings backed it up with a 52-yard field goal to tie the game 3-3 after the first quarter. The Vikings then had a 51-yard field goal, and the Ravens followed it up with a 57-yard field goal. Guess what? Then the Vikings kicked the field goal, and the Vikings had a 9-6 lead at halftime. In the third quarter, the Vikings kicked a field goal, fourth one of the game, then scored a touchdown but actually missed the extra point. The Ravens followed it up with a field goal of their own, and after the third quarter, the Vikings had a bizarre 18-9 lead. The Vikings started the fourth quarter with back-to-back field goals. I believe that is 6 on the game for the Vikings, and they led 24-9 with 3 minutes left in the game. The Ravens scored a touchdown right before the game ended to make it look like it was closer, but the Vikings had that game handled 24-16. The New York Jets were against the Miami Dolphins this week. The Jets started off with a touchdown, the Dolphins backed it up with a touchdown, and the Jets responded with another score in the first quarter to lead 14-7. Both teams then got a touchdown in the second quarter, and the Jets had a nice 21-14 lead at halftime. The Jets were the only ones to score in the third quarter, so they led 28-14. My bad. The Dolphins then scored a touchdown with 11 minutes left in the game, but they were still down by 7. The Dolphins backed it up with a touchdown with 6 minutes left in the game to tie the game 28-28. The Jets then throw an interception, and this sets up a Dolphins field goal with 20 seconds left, and the Dolphins get a surprising 31-28 win by scoring 17 points in a quarter. The New Orleans Saints played against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers scored in the first quarter to lead 7-0. Both teams got a touchdown in the second quarter. The Packers led 14-7. The Saints then score a touchdown, miss an extra point, but they do back it up with a field goal to give them a 16-14 lead after the third quarter. The Packers slide a field goal in with basically at the beginning of the fourth quarter. They lead 17-14. The Saints kick a field goal with 10 minutes left to lead 19-17. And with five minutes left in the game, the Saints lock it up with a touchdown, 26-17. Saints win. The Washington Redskins played against the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. The Redskins started off this game with a field goal in the first quarter to lead 3-0. The Eagles then had a 50-yard field goal. The Redskins were able to score a touchdown, but the Eagles backed it up with back-to-back touchdowns. So after a 17-point quarter, the Eagles led 17-10 at halftime. Both teams were able to score a touchdown in the third quarter, and the Eagles were only up 24-17, but the Eagles came out strong in the fourth quarter, scoring a touchdown and then backing it up with a field goal to lead 34-17. And despite the Redskins scoring a touchdown, the Eagles hold on to a nice 34-24 victory. Our last matchup was the Tennessee Titans versus the Cleveland Browns. This was a doozy. The Titans kicked a field goal to have a 3-0 lead after the first quarter. Both teams knocked in a field goal in the second quarter, so the Titans led 6-3 at halftime. The Browns then kick a nice 47-yard field goal to tie the game 6-6 after the third quarter. So 3 quarters of play, the game is tied 6-6. Nobody's got any touchdowns. Both teams have 2 field goals. Guess what? Start of the fourth quarter, the Titans kick a 46-yard field goal. They lead 9-6. Then wait all the way till 51 seconds left in the game. The Browns kick a big 54-yard field goal to tie the game 9-9. We go to overtime. The Browns get the ball first. They punt. The Titans get it. They punt. The Browns get it back. They punt. And the Titans actually move the ball. They set up for a 47-yard field goal, and they knock it through with 2 minutes left to win the game 12-9. No touchdowns on either side, and the Titans get a crazy overtime win, 12-9. So both the Browns and the 49ers remain winless. Now we're going to take a look at the top fantasy performers to see who had big weeks in Week 7. Starting off at quarterback, Carson Wentz had one heck of a game. Only 268 passing yards, but he threw 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he also ran for 63 rushing yards. That's good for 31 fantasy points. Derek Carr had an incredible game. He threw for 417 yards and 3 touchdowns, with a little 15 rushing yards next to that. 30.2 fantasy points for Derek Carr. Dak Prescott had a nice game. 234 passing yards, but he had 3 passing touchdowns as well as 26 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown for a big 30-point game. And hanging out in the 4th spot, Russell Wilson from Seattle had 334 passing yards and 3 touchdowns along with 10 rushing yards for a nice 26.4 fantasy points. Moving on to running backs, Ezekiel Elliott had one of the best games we might see from running back all year. He ran for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then he had 72 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. The guy had over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's huge. 40.9 fantasy points from Ezekiel Elliott. LaShawn McCoy from the Bills had a nice game. 91 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, as well as 31 receiving yards and 1 fumble. 27.2 fantasy points. Todd Gurley of the Rams continuing to be dominant with 106 rushing yards, a touchdown, and 48 receiving yards. That's worth 25.4 fantasy points. Aaron Jones from Green Bay. Nice game from him. 131 rushing yards as well as a touchdown, 7 receiving yards. That's 22.8 fantasy points right there. Moving on to wide receiver, Amari Cooper from Oakland had a mind-blowing good game. Once again, one of the best performances we'll see out of a wide receiver this year. 210 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 44 fantasy points. Holy moly. Kenny Stills from Miami only had 85 receiving yards, but he reeled in 2 touchdowns to give him 26.5 fantasy points. Tyreek Hill had a sweet game with 125 receiving yards and a touchdown and 7 rushing yards for 25.2 points. Julio Jones as well had 99 receiving yards as well as a touchdown for a nice 24.9 point game. Moving on to the tight ends, O.J. Howard from Tampa Bay. Big game for him. He had 98 receiving yards and 2 touchdown grabs. Jordan Reed from Washington, 64 receiving yards, 2 touchdown grabs. Both these guys make over 26 points. And then Zach Ertz, very consistent tight end. Definitely one of the top 3 so far this season. Has 89 receiving yards and a touchdown for 19.9 fantasy points. Now we're going to look at the defense. The Bears' defense and special teams leads the way with 2 defensive touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, 5 sacks, and they only allowed 3 points the whole game. An incredible 29 fantasy points. Followed up right behind him, the Chargers' defense got a shutout, 0 points allowed, as well as a touchdown, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and 5 sacks. That's worth 24 fantasy points. The Jaguars' defense also got a shutout, 0 points allowed, and to go with that, they got 10 sacks. 10 sacks. That's 17 fantasy points for them. Great game. Kickers. Kickers are fun. Kai Forbath. We were talking about him earlier. The Minnesota Vikings had 6 field goals in one game. Kai Forbath, what a beast. 6 for 6. 2 of them were from 50 yards or more. Surprisingly, he missed that 1 extra point. So he's going to be at 24 fantasy points. Chris Boswell from the Steelers, he had a nice day. He was 5 for 5 on field goals, as well as 2 for 2 on extra points for 19 fantasy points. Greg Zuerlein, 4 for 4 on field goals for him. One of those field goals was above 50 yards, as well as 3 for 3 on extra points. A nice 17 points for Greg Zuerlein. Now we're going to look at the NFC playoff odds. Instead of looking at divisions, we've changed up the format. We're going to be looking at all of the NFC playoff teams, and we're going to be assessing based on 538's ELO ratings. We're going to have them ranked. So they're not going to be ranked by record, but they're going to be ranked on basically what the 538 prediction model thinks is the way they should be ranked. And we're also going to be talking about their record, their projected record, as well as their playoff odds, just to get a grasp of what each conference looks like. So we're going to start with the NFC. Right now, the best team in the NFC is the 6-1 Philadelphia Eagles. They're projected to go 12-4, but they might push into the 13-14 win category. Pretty much the playoffs are locked for them. 85% chance of winning the division, and they've got a 62% chance of getting that first round bye, which is very important. Next best team in the NFC is actually the Seattle Seahawks, chilling at 4-2, having a good year, looking to go 11-5. They got a nice 79% chance at the playoffs, 67% chance of snagging the division, and a 34% chance of grabbing a bye. The New Orleans Saints, also resurgence. They are 4-2. They're projected to go 10-6. They're at 73% playoff percentage, 56% on the division, and they got a 29% chance to get a bye. The Atlanta Falcons used to be much higher, but they've been struggling. Their offense, they don't know what to do. They're stuck at 3-3. They're still projected to go 9-7, though. They got a 50-50 shot at the playoffs, and they still got a nice 28% chance to steal the division, as well as a 13% chance to end up with that bye. The Green Bay Packers, even without their quarterback, they're playing well. They're 4-3. They're projected to go 9-7. They're also looking at a 50-50 playoff chance and a 29% chance of grabbing that division and a 10% chance of a bye. The Dallas Cowboys are the 6th-ranked team in the NFC. They're 3-3, projected to go 8-8 only, so we're going to need to see them play better, but right now they got a 28% shot at the playoffs, 12% shot at the division. The Minnesota Vikings are actually 5-2 right now. They're having a great year. They're projected to go 10-6, 67% chance of making the playoffs, 46% chance of winning the division, and a 23% chance of earning the bye. This team right now is looking playoff bound, but in comparison, the Packers, Cowboys, Falcons, they don't look that good, so they're expected to sort of fall off a little bit. The Los Angeles Rams are sitting at 5-2 also, projected to go 10-6. They got a 50-50 shot at the playoffs and a 27% chance of the division because they got to compete with the Seahawks. But they even got a 12% chance of getting the bye, which is pretty good considering we're now looking at the bottom half of the NFC. After the Rams, we're starting to get into the long shot territory. The Washington Redskins are 3-3. They're projected to go 8-8. They got a 22% chance of getting into the playoffs. Carolina Panthers, they're 4-3, but they haven't been playing well, so they're currently projected 8-8 with a 27% chance at the playoffs and maybe a 12% shot of stealing the division. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are currently 2-4. They're projected to not do well. They're sitting at projected 6-10. Only a small 8% chance to get into that playoff. The Arizona Cardinals, they're also on the downswing. They're 3-4, and they're only projected to go 7-9, but their playoff odds are looking pretty slim at 11% right now. The New York Giants, their playoff odds are practically dead. They're currently 1-6. They are projected not to finish horrendous. They're projected to win 5 games and go 5-11 because this team should not be this bad according to 538's ratings. We'll see if they bounce back or if they just keep tanking. The Chicago Bears, they might be moving up sometime soon. They're currently 3-4 and projected to go 7-9 despite being the second worst team in the NFC. And they got a 6% shot of making the playoffs. So not really looking like they're going to make the playoffs. But hey, 3-4, they're winning more games than they should. And, of course, our lovable losers, the San Francisco 49ers, are at 0-7, and their projected wins has now fallen to 2-14. Moving right into the AFC. The AFC is dominated by 3 power teams right now. The New England Patriots are 5-2, best team in the AFC. They're projected to go 12-4. They got the playoffs locked up at 92%. They got a 73% shot of winning their division, and they got a 50-50 shot of getting that first-round bye. Kansas City Chiefs used to be the best team in the NFL. They lost this week, so they fall down a little bit, but they're 5-2 still, projected to go 11-5. 93% shot at the playoffs, 87% shot of getting their division, and a 57% chance of getting a first-round bye. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're 5-2. They're projected to go 11-5. They have a 93% shot at the playoffs and an 88% chance of winning their division, as well as a 46% shot of grabbing the bye. Pretty sure the 2 teams that get that first-round bye are going to be the Patriots, Chiefs, or the Steelers, with a little bit of room for maybe somebody to come up through the ranks and have a surprisingly good second half of the year. Buffalo Bills, 4-2. They're having a good year. They're only projected to go 9-7. They got a 50-50 shot at the playoffs. It's looking like they're going to have to be a wild card contender because they only have a 17% chance of stealing that division. But hey, maybe they're one of those teams that maybe could grab that bye. They got a 10% shot of a first-round bye. Miami Dolphins are sitting at 4-2, but they're actually projected to only go 8-8. They only have a 39% shot at the playoffs, and they're in the same division as the Bills and the Patriots, so it's pretty rough for them. They got a 10% chance of winning their division. The Denver Broncos, they're 3-3, but they're only projected to go 7-9. They got a 20% shot at the playoffs. It's not looking that good for them, as well as a 7% chance of stealing the division. Now we're going to get into the easiest division. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 4-3. They're only projected to go 9-7, yet they got a 63% shot of getting into the playoffs, a 43% chance of winning their division, and they're another team that could surprise and get into that first-round bye. The Houston Texans are in the same division. They're 3-3. They're projected to go 8-8, but they got a decent 35% chance of making the playoffs, as well as a 22% chance of snagging the division. The bottom half of the AFC, the Oakland Raiders, despite their upset win, they're still 3-4. They're projected to go 7-9. They got a real tiny 10% chance of making the playoffs. The Cincinnati Bengals, 2-4, projected to go 7-9, only a 16% chance of making the playoffs. The Tennessee Titans, check it out. Check out that easy division. They're 4-3 right now, despite barely beating the Browns, and despite being ranked so poorly in the AFC. They're projected to go 9-7, and they have a 47% chance of getting into the playoffs, as well as a 34% chance of winning their division. The Los Angeles Chargers are 3-4. They're projected to go 7-9. They got a tiny 11% chance of making the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens are also 3-4, projected 7-9, but they must have an easier schedule or something because they are projected 24% to make the playoffs, which they'll take. The New York Jets, they're also 3-4, but they're not as good. They're projected to finish 6-10. They're projected not to finish the season well, and they got a real small chance. They only got a 6% chance of making the playoffs. Their division is incredibly hard. The Indianapolis Colts, they've been falling. They're sitting at 2-5. They're projected to go 5-11. They got a 3% chance of getting into the playoffs. Only a 1% chance of maybe winning their division. And, of course, the Cleveland Browns, they're dead. They're not going to be going to the playoffs this year, folks. 0-7, projected to go 2-14, currently battling with the 49ers to see who's going to get that first pick in the draft. So we'll see if they're going to be able to win next week. That's all for this week's NFL recap. Just a friendly reminder to like and subscribe. next week is one of the 2 dead weeks. I believe the next 2 weeks are 6 teams on bye. So there's not going to be as many matchups as we're used to. And after next week, we'll have a halfway mark in the season recap. I know it'll be only week 8 out of 17, but we'll make that our halfway mark in the year. We're going to look at how things are shaping up. Thanks for watching. And as always, go forth and spread beauty and light.